There will be no emergency alert from the government. This post is all you have, and you must read it immediately because it'll vanish soon. On Monday, 10th February, half of my town's inhabitants woke to find themselves afflicted with a headache, and we treated it as a commonplace outbreak of the winter flu. Much like the ever-elusive snow day, the town cold is a one per annum staple of the season. In both cases, adults despair, and opportunistic schoolchildren treasure that day off school. My point is that an outbreak of the flu is nothing out of the ordinary in our town. But it isn't the flu, and it isn't confined to this town, it's everywhere. The headache's consequential phenomenon, which began on Tuesday, 12th February, made both of those things painfully clear. We should have known. Nobody felt as if they had the flu. There were no congested noses, no spluttering coughs, not even a stray sneeze. Only headaches. The mystery of the town headache was a hot topic. In the local eatery, on the morning commute, and even at work. One bus passenger jested that the smarmy mayor's opulent kitchen setup, which features a whopping 10 stoves, might have leaked enough carbon monoxide to poison the entire town. And two of my colleagues had a particularly unsettling conversation about the supposed sicknesses. Stephen said, "I've had migraines before, but this is something else. Even my ears are throbbing. I'm half convinced that my brain is about to slip out of them." "Do you think something's going around?" asked Paul. "I suppose, but it's curious that we only have headaches," Stephen replied. Paul shrugged. "Well, that's how it always starts. I'm sure we'll see more symptoms tomorrow." We did. I was woken around 6 on Tuesday morning by a barbed screech from the street. It was agonizingly melodic, much like the second voice which accompanied it 10 seconds later. A baritone yelled to bottom out the soprano's shriek. Both sounds somehow drowned out the roar of torrential downpour. The rainfall hadn't been enough to wake me before my morning alarm, but the screams certainly did. I had the overwhelming urge to stay in bed, to do anything but draw back the curtains covering my bedroom window. There are no words to encapsulate my dread, weighty and doughy. It stuck to the walls of my gut, threatening never to let go. Not until I had an answer, at least. But that was a lie. Dread gave way to horror when I opened the drapes to gaze at my rainy cul-de-sac. On the other side of the road, watched by their blubbering son on the front lawn, were two sing-song shriekers. Mr. and Mrs. Cowley. They were rising into the air. It seemed, impossibly, as if the fundamental laws of physics had turned a blind eye, made an exception. My neighbors were ascending, rocketing upwards, flailing their arms and legs fearfully as the ground drove away from them. The harder they tried to swim back down to the dirt, the faster some higher power seemed to pull them away. I blinked disbelievingly, hoping that the scene outside my window would change once I'd cleaned the gunk from my eyes. I hoped that a saner version of reality would reveal itself. But it was no trick, no illusion. When I opened my eyes, Mr. and Mrs. Cowley had risen higher still, and their forms, unfastened from earthly forces, showed no sign of slowing. They had climbed higher than the houses of our town, floating away from the soil and their crying sun, those two wet, mushy messes below. The Cowleys' mouths were hanging wide open to unleash those hauntingly melodic notes, one low, the other high. And as they started to claw their hands at their gaping jaws, I considered something horrifying. That their bodies were disobeying not only the laws of gravity, but any conscious commands to stop the screaming. And that something else might be conducting their vocal cords to produce those musical notes. Then my own scream loudened as I noted more bodies in the distance, rising like Mr. and Mrs. Cowley, floating upwards from adjacent residential streets, and disappearing into the clouds, never coming down. For a few minutes, during that inceptive period, social media posts flourished. There was evidence of the phenomenon online, not just here but in countries across the world. Minor incidents in minor places perhaps, but it was a global event. You have to believe me. People began floating upwards, and within a matter of 5 minutes, they had disappeared beyond the clouds, much like their choral symphony of terror. Every ascending person reported a headache the day before. By 6:10 a.m., shortly after the bodies had vanished, posts vanished too. Posters vanished. I know how it sounds, but you'll find no tinfoil hat on my swollen head. It's real. It happened. The Cowley boy has been standing on the lawn and crying all day. Nobody's gone to help him. I think we're all, those of us who remain, too afraid to go outside. And I know it's going to happen again. My head has started throbbing. It's a feeling like no other. The pain, I mean. The headache comes with a persistent pressure. Cracks sound in my head. Speckles skitter across my eyes. My brain balloons. Would it be more terrifying to float off into space with no way of binding oneself back to Earth, or to float into some supernatural abyss? Could this be the rapture itself? I don't know what happened to the ascenders, you see, but I will soon. I've been staring out of my window for 4 hours, and my eyes sting. I don't think I've blinked in that time. I yearn for the outdoors. I yearn to be outside. But enough of my mind remains that I have the wisdom to post this warning. If you have a headache, stay home. Don't bother posting about your experience. Until the phenomenon hits major cities, I think any evidence will be suppressed, easily discounted as a lie, given that this is happening in such small places. But you'll know the truth soon enough. Hopefully you'll only see it. You won't feel it behind your eyes, as I do. But if you do feel your head pound and you live with someone, then beg that safe person to tie you down. You won't be able to resist the call. I'm terrified. My mouth is twitching, and I feel a murmur building at the back of my throat. Soon I'll see what waits above the clouds.